What's up? What's happening? Welcome in on a Friday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live, of course, on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. And on this Friday, we're going to start with golf because, of course, we are. That's exactly what I anticipated when I woke up this morning. I was like, yeah, I can't wait to talk about the golfer getting arrested story. Had that one on the bingo card. Nope. Didn't see that one coming. And yet here we are, the world's #1 golfer, who, by the way, then went out and shot a pretty solid round of golf afterwards, is in the news, not because he shot a solid round of golf. No. Scottie Scheffler in the news, as you very likely know, because every single kind of alert that could possibly come to my phone seemed to come to my phone to tell me about this, from ESPN to Apple News to CNN to the Washington Post to whoever else you might have signed up for news alerts. They're all on it. Scottie Scheffler arrested this morning after either he was obtuse and ignorant of what was happening in a traffic situation or a giant misunderstanding. So here's kind of the facts of the case as best as we know them, as told by both sides. And the two sides of the story here, if you will, if you're trying to make sense of this because you saw a headline and maybe you haven't clicked on a story yet, I did the reading for you, and then we can get into all of it, or at least some of it, because, man, there are a lot of layers to this if we really wanted to get deep. But frankly, I don't feel like having a gigantic societal level discussion on a Friday about the best and worst uses of policing. There was the first and most tragic and most serious part of this is there was a separate traffic incident this morning where a person who I believe was working at the golf club was struck by a van, like a transport van, and died. Awful story on its own that has nothing to do with Scheffler until Scheffler enters the situation hours later. But that is a lot of the folks involved are trying to keep that the main focus of hey, a tragic accident happened here. Someone lost their lives, and we should be focused on the community and the family that is left behind, grieving as this circus sideshow involving Scheffler emerges in the aftermath. So this is right outside the club. Obviously this tragic event happens. They shut down traffic. Well, mixing the accounts here, basically what happens is Scheffler sees that traffic is stopped, proceeds to a different lane to try to get around it all because, in the words of his attorney, that's what he was told to do initially, not knowing that there had been a change of plans because of this traffic situation. So Scheffler pulls around the traffic. A police officer in a bright yellow vest is like, yo, can't do this. Scheffler flashes his credential, thinks he's good to go, and proceeds to try to drive into Valhalla as this officer latches himself onto Scheffler's vehicle. Scheffler within 10, 20 yards, according to ESPN's Jeff Darlington, who conveniently is also driving it at that time and witnessed the entire thing. Scheffler stops. The officer immediately reaches into Scheffler's, Scheffler rolls down the window. Officer reaches in. According to Darlington, it looks like he's trying to pull him out of the car. Scheffler gets out of the car after whatever conversation ensues and is immediately pushed into the car and handcuffed and arrested. Darlington at this point gets out of his car. Scheffler sees Darlington, presumably a familiar face, and is like, "Can you help?" The police are like, "Who's this dude?" And Darlington's got this part all on video, which you can watch on whatever social media platform, the ESPN app. I'm sure ESPN's rolling it on TV as well. And you see all this unfold, and Darlington's like, they're like, "Hey, get back." And Darlington's like, "I'm just trying, eventually Darlington's like, "I'm a reporter. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here." And the police officer, who is, this particular officer, has a fairly jovial demeanor in telling Jeff Darlington that he, Scottie Scheffler, is going to jail. Again, that ain't the story I thought I was going to wake up to this morning, because why would I? Why would you? Why would any of us? And apparently the officer who latched onto Scheffler's car and got dragged a bit has some abrasions on his arm. Darlington suggested that the officer was fairly aggressive with Scheffler, getting him out of the car, which doesn't seem ideal. But also, if this officer had just been dragged, then I also, I understand not being my best if I just got dragged by your car and I'm trying to stop you and you're trying to drive through. I, in my mind, am trying to protect the scene of a fatal traffic accident. And Scottie Scheffler's like, I'm just trying to get around the traffic and get in the golf club like I'm supposed to, because I got to work out and work up to my tee time 5 hours from now. Which goes to say, this all seems like a gigantic waste of time. Obviously, there's a tremendously serious scene in the middle of all of this. That is, this should be treated, locally there in Louisville, and with the respect and with the care that losing a human being deserves. I'm talking strictly about the Scheffler part, which is to say, this feels like a gigantic waste of time. It's a situation in which everybody's wrong, but also kind of no one's wrong. Like, it seems after reading the reporting here that there is a gigantic misunderstanding and horrendous communication, whether it's from the police or from the club, as in Valhalla / the PGA Tour, who puts on, obviously, the PGA Championship, to tell golfers, hey, we know some of you might be coming in early. There was a fatal traffic accident right outside the club. Please wait in the traffic line. You cannot get around it. We are delaying the tournament. Your tee time will be fine. We'll give you a chance to warm up. It'll be okay. Did that happen? Seems like not. Scheffler tries to go where, again, this is according to Scheffler's attorney, tries to go where he thinks he's supposed to. Officer doesn't seem to clearly communicate, nah, buddy, even you can't go around this. Although the officer, according to police report, Scheffler went into a median, so maybe it wasn't so innocent as the attorney for Scottie Scheffler made things sound. And obviously this incident happens, and then and supposed to being like, what do you think you're doing? Because to me, I don't know, I'm not a police officer, but if I was in this particular situation and I'm trying to monitor the situation and figure out the best use of my time and resources, man, what are you doing? Why are you going around? I'm a golfer. I'm playing in the tournament. Okay, why do you think you can go around? Because they told me to. Nah, dude, that's why I told you to stop. And as much as it's a problem that Scheffler, did whatever damage that he may or may not have done to this police officer with the car, which I only say to say that police reports can get exaggerated, which then gives them negotiating room later to plea down from a felony to a misdemeanor and all these kinds of things that can happen in these types of situations, because right now there is a felony charge on Scottie Scheffler's charge sheet that should be mentioned. The idea that Scottie Scheffler is going to actually get convicted of a felony seems absurd here. But assault of a police officer, the way it's written up, yeah, that's a really serious thing. But to just have a conversation and be like, man, I'm sorry. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to. I showed you my credential. I thought that you said I was good. I clearly misread it. I'm really, really sorry. I'm happy to pay for your medical care. I'll do whatever you want, but can we just keep things moving? What kind of waste of resources are we talking about here to process Scottie Scheffler? Does the Louisville Police Department, as they are dealing with a major event and also dealing with this tragic traffic accident, not have anything better to do? Also, Scottie Scheffler, you ain't that special, bro. Just stay in line. So it's kind of like, nobody's in the right here, but we actually don't need to prosecute anything. It's kind of where I just sit on it. It's a gigantic, silly misunderstanding that in the perspective of this is all in reaction to a fatal traffic accident, an officer getting a bump on his arm, we're fine here. We're adults. Just move on. So, of course, it's a big story. Of course, it's wall-to-wall coverage because what a headline, world number one golfer arrested after traffic incident where cop comes away bruised. But at the end of the day, again, I don't want to dive into a whole big discussion here about societal level stuff. But on a baseline level, if the point is to keep everybody safe, Scottie Scheffler is not a threat to society. He's not a menace in any way. He's, at worst, a pompous idiot who did something incredibly stupid because he thought he was better than everyone else and could skip the line. From what I've heard about who Scheffler is, that doesn't seem to be consistent. He doesn't seem to be a pompous dude. Chick Hernandez is going to join us at 5 o'clock, and he can tell us more about Scheffler and the personality and everything else. But, like, if the goal is public safety, like, what are we doing here? That's kind of where I land, which is an unsatisfactory take in some ways because it's really more fun to be fire and brimstone, I guess. But considering the context of the larger thing that happened that triggered all this and the fact that there was someone who lost their life in a family and a community that's grieving, what are we doing here? What are we doing? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. You can join the live chat there. Pretty lively on some days. Some days it has absolutely nothing to do with the actual radio show itself, which means you get 2 shows for the price of one, which in radio/YouTube land is free. So you get 2 shows for $0. That's a bargain. When we get back here on the Team 980, before we talk to Richard Deitsch at 4:30, of course, great sports media reporter at The Athletic about the NFL's new media deal, including the Netflix games on Christmas. We will talk about the NBA playoffs. What a win for the Timberwolves last night. What does it mean for them and the Nuggets as they head to Game 7? That's next on the Team 980. couple of game sevens could be in our future. We know now for a fact that there will be a game 7 in the Denver and Minnesota series. An absolute butt kicking last night by the T-Wolves. And I picked up this game. I was actually watching the Fever Liberty game where Caitlin Clark struggled again. We'll talk about that later on, potentially in the show if we have the time. But I picked up this game after that one, and the Knicks, or sorry, not the Knicks. The Nuggets were hanging around in the first half. I mean, they had a really rough first quarter. They got outscored 31-14. Horrible start. And then, 2-point gap for them by halftime. Come out okay in the third quarter, kind of hold it close at the beginning. And then just an absolute blitz from the really early third quarter into the fourth quarter where the Timberwolves outscored the Nuggets 29-9 in the fourth quarter, which is just remarkable for a team as offensively gifted as Denver is. To hold them to 9 points in a quarter is outrageous. And now, of course, a decent chunk of that by the end is played by the reserves. But still, I mean, I just think that this series in some ways is simple, which is Nikola Jokic is going to be fantastic. And last night, even in the loss, like he's 9 of 19, he didn't shoot it well, 0-4 from 3, but he's still 22 points, 9 rebounds, and he only got 2 assists. But part of that 2 assists is the guys that he's playing with and playing off of, mainly Jamal Murray, shoot so poorly. Like, it's not like they didn't have some looks. Shots don't go in. You don't get credited for the assists. But Jokic is going to be 20, 10, and something, right? We know that. And if he's got 40, well, that's a different story. Although last night they still would have lost by 25 instead of 45. But, he's going to be between 20 and 45 points, and he's going to have 10 to 18 rebounds. Meanwhile, on the other side of the floor, Anthony Edwards is going to have between 20 and 45 points, and he's going to have some rebounds and some assists and some steals. And last night, it was the steals, in part, helping their transition game. He had 3 of them, 27 points in 34 minutes. By the way, Anthony Edwards, he who came into the league with major questions about his jumper, insane athleticism, can he put it all together, goes 4 of 9 from 3 last night. Also, 4 assists, just 1 turnover. He's a plus 43 in the game. They won by 45. Like, what a performance by him. And then it's going to be a question of who else steps up. And last night, the answer for Denver was nobody. Aaron Gordon, 12 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Meh. Michael Porter Jr., just 8 points, 3 of 9 shooting. Jamal Murray, 10 points on 4 of 18. Brutal. And KCP, 9 points, just 2 of 6 from 3. So, like, that's not going to be enough. And then they got nothing from their bench. I mean, I'm talking literally nobody had more than 2 points. Can't win a playoff game that way. Meanwhile, Minnesota gets 21 points from Jaden McDaniels, who was fantastic. Just seemed to hit big shot after big shot, 3 of 5 from 3. It felt like he had 10 threes. That's how big they were in kind of the flow of the game. Gobert, only 8 points, but has 14 rebounds and obviously played better defensively on Jokic. Same thing for Karl Anthony Towns, only 10 points. 3 fouls, was in foul trouble for parts of the game, but 13 rebounds. Conley, 13 points, but had, super efficient night, 5 of 9, 3 of 6 from 3, and a bunch of big shots. And then they have Naz Reid has 10 off the bench. Garza has 10 off the bench. They are 8 off the bench. Luka Garza, a lot of those were more in garbage time. But you just have guys that come in, and Reid especially, 10 points, 11 rebounds, that make a big impact for you. And that depth and that ability to get multiple contributors is what's going to win you playoff basketball games when your stars are going to perform like stars. And unless they can completely and thoroughly dominate the game single-handedly, which feels like what Denver needs right now from Jokic, you're in trouble. So Game 7 is Sunday there. And I wonder if being at home is enough for Denver. I think they're the better team. I still trust them way more. I mean, because even in this game where it's a 45-point blowout, we're talking 10 points for Towns, 8 for Gobert. Again, 27 rebounds between the two. So they mattered. They were important. And defensively, they mattered in some of the plays they made on that end. But if Denver has a better night offensively and gets things back on track because they're at home and their guys hit shots and some of these Denver or the Minnesota guys don't hit as many, I think Denver still got it. So that's going to be interesting to watch on the weekend on Sunday. Of course, between now and then, we'll get determination of whether there will be more Game 7s on Sunday and into the weekend. Knicks-Pacers is tonight. This series has been dominated by the home team. Multiple 20-point blowouts, and it's going to come down to can Tyrese Halliburton, who has been spectacular in the wins and really rough in the losses, can he find some consistency? I mean, this is his Eastern Conference semis so far. I had the one good game in New York. He had 6 points in the first one. He did score 34 in the second, but was more stagnant in the second half. 35 points in Game 4, 20 in Game 5 to go with 5 assists and 6 rebounds. That was a easy win. So, that was only in 28 minutes. So your per minute number is still really high. 4 of 10 from 3, super efficient. And then he's got just 13 on 1 of 4 from 3 and just 5 assists in the 121-91 loss to New York at Madison Square Garden on what day was that? Wednesday. So a couple of things to watch tonight. Obviously, Halliburton, his involvement in the game, his aggressiveness is a huge determining factor on whether or not we see a Game 7. The other big thing is, with all the injuries to everyone else on New York, can they hold Jalen Brunson to 30? Dude had 44 the other night. He's taking 30-plus shots in a lot of these games. If he is all of the offense, what can you do as a team to force the ball out of his hands? And this is something that I just don't really understand that Indiana's not doing, is if he is the entirety of the offense, make someone else beat you. Blitz him. Pressure him full court. 94 feet. Get the ball out of his hands. Make them work for it. Because the other thing about this series is I keep waiting for New York to hit the cliff, and I was a little scared they had after Game 2, and all of a sudden they get blown out in Indiana in Game 3 and lose again in Game 4. You're like, are they running out of gas? And I know these dudes, Tibbs has them in phenomenal shape. Plays them a lot of minutes, and that actually helps in some ways this time of year until you hit the cliff. And the longer the series goes, with as few minutes as they've got, or as few guys as they've got due to injuries, do they just run out of the guys? And does that mean in Game 7 they don't have the energy, they don't have the legs to hit the shots they need? So huge game tonight, obviously, for Indiana, playing for their season. And if they get to Game 7, they just gotta hope that the Knicks finally run out of gas at home. And then, of course, over the weekend, Thunder and Mavs is on Saturday night. Thunder looking to force a Game 7 as they're on the road in Dallas. Dallas and Luka trying to close things out at home. Then they would be on to the Western Conference Finals. That's a look at the NBA weekend. Of course, Sunday, we will have that Game 7 between the T-Wolves and the Nuggets, and then Pacers-Knicks is, if necessary. The Game 7 between the Mavs and Thunder would be Monday night, if necessary. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, our pal Richard Deitsch joins us from The Athletic. RD, of course, their great sports media reporter. How did Netflix get in on the NFL, and what is that going to look like? That and more next on the Team 980. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Of course, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it's our pleasure to welcome back to the show from the Athletic sports media reporter, Richard Deitsch. RD, what's up? How are you?
How are you? Doing well?
Doing well. Glad that we got a chance to catch up. It's been a crazy week, obviously, with the schedule release and then all the kind of news around the schedule release when it comes to NFL media. I think the biggest, most interesting thing to me, Richard, is this NFL Christmas, which we've kind of guessed was coming. We thought maybe they would skip it this year because it's on a Wednesday. And, like, how's the NFL going to play on a Wednesday? Well, they're going to make money, so they figured it out. And we find out it's going to be on Netflix. How did Netflix push their way in with all of the other broadcasters, I'm assuming, wanting these games as well?
Well, yeah, first of all, I agree with you. I think the biggest sort of story to come out of the NFL schedule release is the fact that Netflix is now a NFL media rights holder partner. Now, they're a small one, obviously, given it's 2 games this year, minimum of 1 game over the preceding 2, although I think they have an option to go to 2 games in 2025 and 2 games in 2026. But this is significant because there's no bigger, content company in the world than Netflix. I mean, by the letter of the law, sure, Apple, Google, et cetera. But, Netflix in terms of a streaming company, nobody has more subscribers than Netflix, 240 million globally, 80 million in the United States. And so they see this as, for them, a way to get more into the advertising world. And, for so long, their money essentially was maintained or built through subscriptions. And obviously they, sort of rose and beat everybody at their own game. But now they see an opportunity to have ad-supported products, to get advertising in there. And the NFL is obviously a great content property, if not the best content property out there, to come in and then to get people to advertise on it. I also think obviously they have a chance to get some more subscribers because it's an exclusive game. The game itself, I don't know the exact figures. I've seen it reported by some credible places that it wasn't as much as you think. It was less than what Peacock paid, which is a touch over $100 million. So, and for Netflix, for me and you, this is big money. For the Netflix and Peacocks of the world, it's not. So this was a pretty, to me, low barrier to entry for them to sort of start to experiment and to see how they do with major live sports. They'll use somebody else to do the production because Netflix obviously doesn't have a football production department. But if I were these other places, the CBSs, the NBCs, the Disneys, I'd be pretty scared because Netflix has essentially endless amounts of money if they decide to, turn the spigot on and to go after live sports rights. So I'm with you. I thought it was a very, very, very big story.
So for the audience, I think I know where you're heading with this, but you're the expert, so I'm going to ask you and make sure that I'm right and let you enlighten the audience in the process. Why would you be scared if you are CBS, Viacom, NBC, Universal, Comcast, et cetera, those big, giant companies that to us on the outside, as you said, like it seems like they have endless money too. So why would you be scared if you were them that Netflix is entering this space?
Yeah, by the way, never call me an expert. That's a mistake. But they don't have endless money. That's the reality. So take CBS, for instance, which is a under the Paramount sort of larger corporate. They've struggled, Paramount. I mean, they've struggled. There's a reason why they're looking to ultimately sell. As big a massive property as Disney is, again, they have a business in terms of the cable business that isn't growing anymore. They've had challenges when it comes to amusement parks. During COVID, they were cooked. People weren't going. So NBC Universal in a little bit better shape with Comcast, but then they're not making money on Peacock either. They're not turning a profit. Netflix is the one place that's turning a profit. So that's the difference. Is they just have so much more money to work with because this is their only business. You know what I mean? Like this is sort of what they're focused on. In terms of where some of these other companies have a lot of different parts to it. So, yeah, no one should cry poverty for Disney or Comcast or Paramount Global. But they would be in my opinion, a little bit of a different situation if Netflix really decided to let's say, go all in on the NFL package, I don't think anybody can, short of Apple or Google, I don't think anybody could beat them.
Is there an argument to be made somewhere, or has someone kind of done the reporting and the research about the efficacy of just doing what Netflix has done, which is essentially stayed in their lane? They've just tried to be exceptional in their lane versus these other companies that have tried to be a bunch of stuff. Because like you said, the one group of companies that's bigger than Netflix is like Apple and Google, and they've obviously gone in a bunch of different directions. They have very diversified portfolios, so that would be a fairly easy counter. But at the same time, for media companies, especially things that started as media companies, like would NBC have been better just trying to be NBC, or is like, you get kind of what I'm saying at, and have people kind of looked at that?
Yeah, I do. I think the reality is it's sort of too late to go a different way. I mean, NBC's, the decision would have been for some of these companies not to have a streaming service or not. But once they decided to do it and go in as the NBC, as Comcast did with Peacock, as Paramount did with, Paramount Plus, as Disney did with ESPN Plus and Disney Plus, like, they're in. The problem for these businesses is that they haven't made a profit on streaming. I mean, they've lost a lot of money, but they've lost a lot of money as they've gained subscribers. The hope is that ultimately the streaming business will be the dominant content business, and long term, that's how you stay in business and ultimately can make some money. So I don't really think they had like these other places didn't really have an option. If you're just sort of Disney, we'll take that as an example. You can't just stay in the cable business. I mean, the cable business obviously is just slowly declining year after year. So you have to figure out new revenue streams. The difference is that, Netflix has grown significantly and has become a dominant content player in the United States. I mean, it is incredible that they've been able to build a business that has 80 million people paying money each month for what they do. There's just not many businesses in the world that can say that. So that's just what makes them very, very powerful. But again, I don't think Netflix has designs on being the next ESPN. Where I would be scared for some of these places is if Netflix decided to go all in on the NFL, then I think that would mean that, I don't know, maybe 10 years from now there's no CBS NFL, you know what I mean? Or maybe 10 years from now there's no NBC NFL. It's not that Netflix is going to own everything. It's just that they can get a big piece of it, and that should scare the other places.
Sure. Richard Deitsch is with us from The Athletic. He's not an expert. He's just written a lot. He's with us here on the team at 980. So, I think the thing that's interesting about all this, Richard, is I think it was a tweet from someone the other day that was basically like, the best version of Netflix was not when they were making original content, but it's when they were getting a bunch of other people's content and they were the distribution platform. And whether it was major movies, like the early days of Netflix, where you might have gotten the DVDs in the mail, to other television shows. I mean, even some of their best stuff now, we think of a show like Great British Bake Off as a Netflix show here in the US, but that's a British television production that we get via Netflix. And I just wonder if there was an alternate path universe, and there's going to be a documentary down the line where if an ESPN and NBC had focused on creating content and letting distributors distribute, if they're maybe in different financial states and everybody would actually be better off.
I mean, maybe. I mean, in some ways that like ESPN ultimately can get something shown on Amazon or Netflix, right? They'll get money for that. Like Netflix ended up showing The Last Dance, right? So it's not that ESPN didn't get some revenue out of that. Like, I don't know what the contract was, but ultimately ESPN profits from that. What it comes down to is, you want to be a company in sort of the business entertainment space that people are willing to put down their wallet, or their Venmo or however, or their cryptocurrency, and give you this every month. Like that's the ball game. And Netflix figured out how to do that. But, again, I don't cover Netflix at all on a day-to-day basis. There's many more people who are more business experts than me. But, they're also going to have to figure out sort of what they are heading forward. There's not endless amounts of money to produce and develop all these contents, right? In some ways, they always have to have hits from all the different kinds of, either features or movies that they do, series that they do, documentaries that they do. So, they have their own sort of challenges too, that they have to continue to refresh Netflix to make it valuable enough so that people won't churn and that they won't go away. What I think you'll ultimately see, I think it's just sort of like, sort of hypothesizing for me is I think a lot of these streaming services at some point, they're going to ask you for a yearly commitment as opposed to a monthly commitment. I don't know when that's going to be, but I feel like that's going to eventually come because I think a lot of these places are going to have to try to protect for churn because, in some ways, let's say like, YouTube or something like that, you just get it for the NFL season and then you take off. Let's say you like Peacock and let's say you love the Olympics or something like that. You get Peacock for July and August and then you take off in September. But if they get you for the year and like a year commitment, almost like a cell phone or something like that, it's obviously going to be harder to do.
Sure. And of course, that's what cable used to be. They would have
Correct.
yearly options, and all these streaming services are now bundling together, and time is a flat circle. And we've talked about that before, how we're just headed back towards cable and calling it something else. But that's a different conversation for either later in this chat or another time. Richard Deitsch from The Athletic with us here on the Hoffman Show. You mentioned Netflix probably have someone else do the production. What do we know about what these games will actually look like based off of either what you're hearing and who you think they might partner with, or what we've seen from Netflix when they've done live sports in the past?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, nobody knows yet. I don't think I actually honestly think they haven't made the decision yet. What would be realistic would be that they'll use an existing partner to do the production and to staff up most of the announcers. So that'll depend on, what happens with NFL Media / NFL Network, and does that get rolled up eventually into ESPN? There's sort of a lot of news out there that ESPN might purchase that. And so maybe NFL Network staffers are the game analysts. Because of the day of the week of the Christmas day, CBS and Fox could, theoretically do it because their staffers wouldn't necessarily have to be somewhere until like a Sunday. So that might make sense, whether they'd be interested or not. I don't see another streamer doing it, so I'd be very stunned if Amazon's people would be there. So it'll be almost assuredly another network, I think, doing the production. I think the other network, most of the broadcasters will come from another network. It is possible, though, that Netflix just decides that they want to do a couple of unique things, and maybe they have some, they just making this up, like they pay somebody a lot of money to sort of be a studio analyst as a one-off. I'm making this up. Okay, like they give Travis Kelce $1 million to be the Netflix studio analyst for that day. They could do something crazy like that, but there's just no way, given the amount of time between now and December, where they could put together some whole kind of production to put on a football game. They have no experience in doing this, and they're going to have to outsource it.
Richard Deitsch with us for a few more minutes here on the Hoffman Show. The other big thing that I think came out that is super interesting, Richard, this week in terms of the NFL and their media landscape is the new version of Hard Knocks, which is going to follow, or I guess has been following, the New York Giants during the offseason. What do you make of the fact that the NFL says there's enough interest in the offseason for us to do a Hard Knocks behind-the-scenes show where there will be literally zero football and it's all transactional nerd stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the content will be fine. I don't know how many people are going to watch that, to be honest. And it really, in some ways, doesn't even matter anymore on viewership. I think the NFL sees Hard Knocks as a branding play, where it gets people excited about football a couple months before the game starts. So as long as they can get a team to, allow the cameras to go behind the scenes and to get some stories, that's sort of what it more feels like at this point, that the NFL, they use it as a marketing vehicle. In some ways, I'm still surprised Hard Knocks exists, even though it's really, really obviously well done. The people in NFL Films are fantastic, but it's nowhere near revolutionary anymore because we now live in a world where all these different streaming services essentially do a behind the scenes kind of look with teams. So they have the advantage that it's the NFL, so it's the most popular sport, so they'll always have a base of fans. I really just look at it more as just it's a marketing play more than anything else. You get a couple viral moments that always come out of this stuff, and what's been proven is just people have an insatiable appetite for the National Football League. I mean, there's a reason why the schedule show gets watched on the NFL Network. There's a reason why the draft draws 6-7 million people. It's a true 365 day a year sport at this point.
The other big, or last, I guess, big NFL story this week is we find out that Brady is indeed, this was kind of just this has been looming in the background and he hasn't veered off the track. Brady's going to be in the booth as the number one analyst for Fox this year. We find out his first game is going to be in Cleveland. It's a Cowboys-Browns game. Like, how high are your expectations for him? I mean, the salary we know is outrageous, but what do you make of Brady, the broadcaster, and how good do you think he can be quickly?
It's hard to know, like, how good he'll be. I think he'll be better than the people who think he's going to bomb, and I think he's not going to have a Tony Romo-like debut. So it's going to be somewhere in between. He seems to be taking it very seriously and talking to the people at Fox. I know he's talked to a lot of different broadcasters to get ideas from them. Fox has a great production team on their A crew, so he's got a great director and a great producer, and he'll be helped out immensely. You know, you shouldn't feel bad for Tom Brady, but the reality is, like, nobody with that kind of salary gets to sort of learn how to do TV anymore on like a number 2 or number 3 team, which is really how it should be done. You know, he gets thrown into basically the A team right away. He gets thrown into a game that's going to be watched by 30 million people week one. And if he has any screw up, you know, he's going to be trending on Twitter like literally in seconds. So, you know, he's got a high bar to cross, no question about that. But I think there'll be a lot of curiosity seekers who want to sort of see him that first week in particular to see how he does. And because he's had so much success and he knows a lot of the players who are still playing today, I think that will help him. Like, he's probably played against a lot of the people who would be on defense for both of those teams. I have no doubt in production meetings, because he's Tom Brady, the quarterbacks will probably give him some interesting stuff that they might not give others. So, you know, he's got a shot to do good. If I was Fox, just sort of in terms of how I would play it, I would try to tamper expectations as much as possible. And then if he overcomes them or, over delivers, then, you really got a good PR story. But, I don't expect him to bomb. I'm not necessarily convinced that he's also going to be like, a guy who's going to be doing this. The one thing I would say in terms of Tom Brady that I feel very confident in is he has a 10-year contract, I believe. I would bet pretty much everything I have there's no chance he will be in the Fox booth in 2034.
Interesting. When Buck and Aikman left, they obviously elevated Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson. Greg Olson's now going to go work with Joe Davis. And Kevin's a guy I consider a friend. I think you know him and have had him on your podcast and think quite highly of him. But are you at all surprised that Burkhardt stays as the number one voice, or do you think with the job that he's done that he's earned that and has that cachet now as a number one guy?
Yeah, no, he's their number one guy. That he shouldn't have been. That shouldn't have been changed. I mean, he absolutely deserves that position. The reality is Greg Olson should have that position as well. They, Fox News Corp made the Brady hire. It wasn't even Fox Sports, and it's Tom Brady. You get it. Like I think everybody understands that he's, as the greatest, arguably the greatest player in the history of pro football. If he's going to be part of your broadcast group, he's going to be doing the top games. You want the most people to see him. Which it's a first world problem for Greg Olson, but it does suck because he has put the kind of performance in that is worthy of an A crew. But yeah, I don't think you remove Kevin Burkhardt just because Olson is gone. And one of the things you want to do for Brady is you want as much continuity on that crew as possible. So you keep Aaron Andrews, you keep Tom Rinaldi, you keep Burkhardt, you keep the same producer, you keep the same director, you keep the same associate director, associate producer, et cetera, and on and on and on. And that should help out Brady because everybody else around Brady knows what they're doing, and everybody else around Brady's worked together for a long time. And so that should make things a lot easier for Brady to come in. But if you're Burkhardt, one of the things you got to do is you got to figure out chemistry with Brady away from being on air. You got to figure out how to make him look as good as he can. And the strength of Burkhardt, I think, is that he's pretty much ego free as a broadcaster. He likes and allows his partners to shine. And I think if you're Brady, I think you got to feel good that you got that guy next to you, for sure.
Yeah, if you can deal with the personalities he deals with on the Fox baseball studio show. Then
Right.
I don't want to say Brady's easy, but man, there's some big
But
personalities.
I'm not the biggest fan of that Fox. No offense, Kevin, but I'm happy to watch some other pregame shows other than that one. But I mean, like the key there is that Kevin Burkhardt has worked with people who are very, very famous, and that's helpful when you are now entering a new relationship with a guy who is extremely famous.
Yeah, no doubt. Last but not least, with Richard Deitsch, of course, writer on all things sports media at The Athletic. I know you wrote on Full Court Press, the new ESPN documentary. We had the chance to have Kristen Lapis on the show earlier in the week. I was a big fan of that doc. I'm curious, as someone who has watched so many sports documentaries over the years, what you made of a look inside a college basketball season, which is a bit different than something we're used to seeing.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I've known Kristen Lapis a long time. She's a great filmmaker. She directed the Giannis doc for Amazon as well. And the one thing about that doc, especially with Caitlin Clark, who's such a prominent athlete now, they got her trust, and they got into situations and places which you don't often get cameras. The other thing I appreciated were the coaches who were highlighted in that: Lisa Bluter of Iowa, Corey Close of UCLA, and Don Staley of South Carolina. They let them in their locker room at halftime and after games, and that's good footage when you see coaches like light into their team. Like, a lot of times someone who's covered women's basketball for a long time, I think a lot of people think like it's all vanilla and cotton candy and nobody's cursing and nobody's yelling. It's like literally the opposite. It's just like the NBA or just like men's college basketball. All this stuff goes down, and that's what I liked about Full Court Press is it didn't, it didn't try to make the film soft. Like it sort of like showed you like this is what the players have to go through, and everything's high stakes, and there's a lot of tension, and the filmmakers got lucky. I mean, the reality is, maybe it'll change, but the reality is, when that film came out, Caitlin Clark was probably, I don't think it's crazy to say, one of the 10 most famous athletes in the United States. And so, you got a subject who really a lot of people are interested in. And so their timing was good. And the thing that I like is I think they'll now continue this. I would imagine that they will have, people next year like maybe Juju Watkins or Paige Beckers or whoever. Like, I think it's good for women's basketball that they're doing the kind of immersive documentaries that we're seeing for other sports.
No doubt. I think one of the things, just generally speaking about sports media and some of the leagues and sports that have tried, men's and women's, to catch hold specifically in the U.S. over the years is because they don't get the coverage, you don't learn about the personalities. And in many ways, it was Drive to Survive that kind of broke that. It was like, here are the people, now come watch the sport. And it feels like Full Court Press is, obviously people were watching the sport already, but I think the continuing of a show like Full Court Press could be really interesting to ensure that people are invested in the people and thus watch the sport once Caitlin Clark, the biggest star that they've ever seen, and maybe the second biggest in terms of popularity, at least in the last 20 years, and Angel Reese, have gone on to the WNBA.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, one of the things that works as well is that, with NIL, those players now, like, they have money. Like there's things going on in their lives or advertisements and endorsements. They're not just, hey, I'm going to class from, for 4 hours and then I practice and then I go to the gym and then I go eat. Like there's a lot going on in their lives because they're brands essentially, in addition to athletes. And that's why it's going to work now for those kind of series in college because in many ways they're very similar to pro athletes now. And that makes even though they're young, that makes their story, it broadens their story out. It brings more people into a story like that.
I look forward to the behind the scenes of the Subway ad in season 2. Richard Deitsch with us here on the Hoffman Show. RD, always great to chat. Really appreciate your time and have a great weekend.
You too. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Richard Deitsch from The Athletic. Again, you can read his work at theathletic.com or on their app. And follow him on Twitter at Richard Deitsch. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Chick Hernandez joins us, WUSA9 Sports Anchor. Talk a little Commanders OTAs, but also Mr. Chick is quite the golf aficionado, so we'll dive into this Scottie Scheffler story as well. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, hour 2 here on a Friday. Hope you are having a good one heading into what I hope will be a great weekend for you. But 5 o'clock means it's time to talk about the day's top story. It's time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
So today's top story is world number 1 Scottie Scheffler, world number 1 golfer Scottie Scheffler. We don't talk a lot of golf on this show, so I feel like I need to clarify. World number 1 golfer Scottie Scheffler was driving in this morning to Valhalla Golf Club to prepare for his round. There was a fatal traffic accident that he tried to go around. So, according to his attorney, a misunderstanding with a cop. And all of a sudden, Scottie Scheffler was in a jail cell. As you might have heard during the update during the break, he started his warm-up there. He ultimately played golf and played the second round today. And to talk about all of that, WUSA9 lead sports anchor and golf aficionado, Mr. Chick Hernandez is with us. Chick, didn't think we'd be talking about this today.
No chance, Hoff. No chance. Absolutely unbelievable to wake up. I played golf today, but I was not in a jail cell to begin my day.
That's a good thing. I will say, real quick, peel back the curtain, story time. There were 2 people that came to my mind in DC sports media to talk to this story about immediately. And there's quite a few golfers, so apologies to like JP Finley and Mitch, who are avid golfers as well. But you and Sheehan both came up immediately to my mind as super golf guys. And so I text Kevin, and he goes, sorry, can't do it. I'm golfing. And then I text you, and do you want to tell the people where you were when you got my text?
12th hole, I believe. 12th hole. Yep. Good day. Finally, a little dry day, so I was out there golfing. And by the way, when you say golf aficionados or golfers, I mean, let's be honest. Sheehan, Tischler, Finley, not quite in the same realm as myself. I'm gonna go ahead and pat myself on the chest on that.
I don't doubt it based off of hearing about your respective scorecards. Although Tischler can play. I've heard some pretty good numbers out of him.
Oh, he can play.
But you're pretty good at the old swinging thing. But I need your analysis. I need your analysis hat on, not your actual playing hat, Mr. Chick.
All right.
Give us some perspective here for those of us that are not huge golf aficionados in any way, watching or playing.
Right.
Like, how surprising is this based off who Scottie Scheffler is? Obviously, the incident itself depends on who you ask. You know, Scheffler's attorney kind of gives one account. The police report says something a little bit different. But, like, the fact that this is Scheffler, not just he's the world number 1, but, like, the demeanor and, like, who is Scottie Scheffler, I guess, is really the basic question.
Well, he's one of the nicest guys on tour to begin with. I remember when I called, I guess one of his, this is probably 4 years ago, PGA Tour Radio I was working for, and I'm calling shots, and I'm going, who is this guy with the weird swing with his feet? But my gosh, can he strike the ball? One of the nicest, unassuming guys on tour, 1. 2, I think what you have here is police and security at golf tournaments. They're not golf aficionados. They're just doing their job. A lot of those guys don't know who the golfers are. So you see this guy who's very unassuming. And 2, I just listened to Scottie's press conference, and he didn't say who he was, didn't say, he didn't go, do you know who I am? He didn't say, I'm Scottie Scheffler. He just was so stunned at what was taking place that it never came out of his mouth. Would that have made a difference to the police? I don't know. But he's just one of the nicest guys. And what happens at golf tournaments a lot of times is these golfers, I mean, a lot of them, besides Tiger, Rahm, maybe Spieth and Ricky, they're not the most recognizable guys off the golf course. I mean, you could literally be standing next to somebody and not realize it. And a lot of the times those security guys and police don't know. Not that that makes a difference, but they don't know. And so you have that dynamic. What's confusing is, those cars they drive, the courtesy cars, they're all well marked. So it's clear to me that there was not communication between the course security and Popo about, hey, these guys and their caddies are allowed on the course. They're allowed to get through to get to what they're doing, get to their tee time, get to their workouts beforehand. So it's just a convergence of mishaps there that you shake your head. And as you said at the top, a pedestrian lost his life earlier this morning, which kind of started this whole thing with the traffic jam and everything else. But I believe Scottie when he says, I don't know. I didn't know what was going on, and I thought I was just trying to get to the course. I don't think he knew that this policeman was on. I don't know where the policeman was. He wasn't on the hood, but he was certainly hanging on to the car when Scottie drove around.
Right. And I think there's a couple of things that you bring up that to me just kind of make the situation, I guess frustrating. I don't know if I have a better word for it.
Right.
Where it's been reported that the officer was not a part of the regular security detail because obviously,
right.
as we've talked about, this is in response to a fatal accident that had happened, a true tragedy in the early morning hours there in the Louisville area, where this guy is not a part of the regular thing. But it just seems to me, Chick, that with such a major event, the communication between the PGA, the course, the players, there seems to be something missing there. Do you have any insight on kind of how that would work? If, because it's also the other part of this is this is like prior to 6 a.m. This is very early. So maybe some of the people that would have been in charge of the communication aren't up in there. So what light can you shed on us as someone who's covered these tournaments and is there and has been there about how that would work to tell the golfers hey, we know that you typically get in with a credential, but not today. You got to sit in traffic because there's a far more serious thing happening here.
Yeah, I mean, the way that it normally works is, once this accident happens, then, then the legal police are arriving at the scene. They're unconcerned with golf traffic, number one. They are concerned with, what's taking place. This person's lost their life. They've got to deal with that situation. So I don't think that there was a whole lot of communication going on between the tournament. As you said, it's early in the morning. Scottie was going to work out before his round of golf. He had an 8-something tee time, so he was going to go work out. A lot of those guys do that before a round of golf. And as you say, it's just a complete disconnect between security, the tournament officials, and police. And what normally happens is, and a lot of golfers did make their way in. I mean, there were guys who teed off when they were supposed to. It was the backup where guys got caught, and some guys still got through. It's just that, for whatever reason, Scottie decided to go around, circumvent, the traffic and try to go around, and wasn't really paying attention to this police officer who was, being dragged or jumping on the back of the car, wherever it was. And I just think it's so early and it was so quick. I'm not sure that tournament officials were fully aware of what was going on. They might have thought, it's just a traffic jam. Fans are trying to get in, unaware that there was an accident and that this was taking place. And the police, it's now a crime scene, right? So police have to take over, and that's where that disconnect took place. And it's unfathomable. And then for Scottie to go, and here's the weird part for me is that one of the charges is he's charged with a felony. So then how is he getting out of jail so quickly? If you're charged with a felony, that's going to take a while.
With no bail. He was released with no bail quickly. And if there was a bail number, Scottie Scheffler can pay it. He got the money. But that's wild to me.
Yeah, and I think at some point the Louisville police realized we have made a mistake here and made a boo-boo. So we've got to try to rectify this as quick as possible and get this guy to the course. The owner of Valhalla is the one who went to the police station, got him out, and drove him to the course. It's just, and then he goes to shoot 66, which is just mind-numbing because this game is so mental at their level. And for him to compartmentalize it all and have one of his best rounds in a major and now in full contention, tied for third, it doesn't make any sense to me. This is why he's the number one golfer in the world. But I don't think there are many other golfers that would have gone to the media afterwards and had his normal post-round press conference. But he sure was sitting there and answered every question that he possibly could and talked about it. It was just chaotic. It was chaotic. He was sitting in the cell. He's stretching because he believes he's still going to get out and get to his tee time, of which he doesn't know what time that is. It's unfathomable.
No, totally bonkers. He goes out, shoots 66, like you said. He is currently 3 off the lead of Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa at 11 under par above him as well. And by the way, Chick, of course, you talk about like some of the timelines here. His arraignment on these charges conveniently 9 a.m. on Tuesday, so he gets to get through the weekend. I guess he'll stay a little longer in Louisville, or the charges will be they'll work out something ahead of time. I tend to think that they'll probably be able to with whatever attorneys that Scottie Scheffler has in the Louisville Police Department. Feels like it would be good for all parties to get this all figured out, pay a little bit of money, and keep on with life and things.
How stunning is the picture, right? A month ago, this guy was wearing a green jacket, winning the Masters. And then this morning, he's in a freaking orange jumper. And I'm like, what is going on here? You know, and he handled it as well as he possibly could. And I'm sure Louisville police will come out with another statement they did earlier about what happened to the police officer who was injured. I thought it odd that they made sure they mentioned that the cost of the police officer's pants was $80. Weird.
Yeah. We don't need to go too far, or we don't need to go into this at all. I'm actually going to say, don't respond to this. I'm just going to keep it moving. The Louisville Police Department, they've got a history of having to pay out some settlements and stuff, and maybe $80 could be helpful for them. But we're just going to keep it moving.
Sure.
Chick, what do you see for the weekend here? Schauffele's on the course right now. Shot a 62 yesterday, 3 under already today through 9. Quick prediction, and then let's talk some Commanders OTAs. What do you see happening this weekend?
Yeah, I can't discount, just like when Tiger was at his height, I can't discount Scottie Scheffler. He's, like you said, right now 2 off the lead. And it's a wet course. Guys can fire at pins. Xander's playing well. Colin had a great round 66 as well today. So I think, there's no reason for me to waver from the fact that Scottie Scheffler will win back-to-back majors and do it, and it'll be talked about for ages. We've also, by the way, forgotten that he missed the last 2 weeks because, he's a brand new dad.
Wow, man, that's nuts. What a couple of months. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's yeesh. Imagine his wife waking up this morning, newborn. It's like you wake up. Hey, honey, how was your morning? You ready for your round today? Well, I'm nice and limber. There's enough room in the jail cell to stretch. I'm sorry. What now?
Yeah,
God.
Social media, when his son Bennett is, 11, 12 years old, he's going to look back and go, hey, Dad, I'm reading something here. Did you get arrested at the PGA Championship?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then did you win? Yeah, he's got a chance. Nuts.
Right.
All right, Chick Hernandez is with us, of course. Huge golf aficionado, as we said. The lead golf aficionado in D.C. I'll give that to you, Chick. You've earned it. But also, of course, lead anchor at WUSA9, been covering D.C. sports for years and years, including the Commanders. What was your big takeaway when, besides, dang it, wish I had dry clothes? Outside of that, from Tuesday being out there for OTAs, what's the thing that was in your mind as you were leaving practice?
I think just hearing Cliff Kingsbury say that Jaden Daniels doesn't make a move without intention. And, prior to the draft, it's all about, what kind of body does he have? They're trying to make comparisons to Robert Griffin III, blah, 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 blah. And talking with Kingsbury and other coaches and players, he's already taken over the huddle. And he has, I think a lot of, I don't think the virtual reality was made fun of, but it was like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? This dude dove in, and the fact that he can make these, audibles at the line of scrimmage already and make the protection calls, the correct protection calls, 2 weeks outside of being drafted, I think has surprised those guys. And so that's what stuck in my mind. And the other thing is defensively, talking to Frankie Louvu and saying that Bobby Wagner is an encyclopedia of knowledge and that he is just going to be a sponge. So there's a lot of factors here with these 40-plus new guys on this team. And I've told people every chance I get, they say, what's it like out there? It's 180 degrees. When you walked in the building for the last 20 years as a part of the media, they would look at you and it was, what do you want? Like, what are you doing here? No barely any eye contact. Now you walk in the building, it's, hey, Greg, hey, Chick, how can I help you? What do you need? It's a small thing. The culture has flipped in the building, and it's seeping down into this team, and that's the fact that they brought in guys that are of that ilk. I think whether it equates to wins or not, I don't know. But I don't think you will watch a game and go, what are they doing? as opposed to the last 15, 20 years.
Certainly, by the tail end of last year, that was the case. And I think back to a year ago, Chick, and we're watching Bieniemy coach, and we're like, this is different. I think we think this is good. Now we watch again, and we watch Cliff and DQ and Joe Witt and all these coaches coach, and we're like, okay, this is different. We think this is good. What chance are we falling for something different and thinking that it's good versus why do you think this is actually good? Because by the way, I'm not asking this as a setup question because I genuinely think what they're doing this year is good and it is different. I agree with you. Everything feels very different than it did last year, but I also remember what we were saying a year ago and want to at least have that level of humility about it.
Well, I think with all the new blood, free agents, draft picks, all of that, they weren't a part of this. They haven't been a part of this. So they're coming in with a fresh attitude. And I think the guys who have been dragging the last couple of years, the Jonathan Allens of the world, Deron Paynes of the world, they're getting a boost of energy and realizing, oh, these guys have no idea what we went through. So it's not on their radar. And so they're coming with a clean slate. And I think that kind of it's just a freshness to it all. And then the coaching staff, being completely different, that challenges a bunch of these guys who've been there, done that, or at least I say been there. They haven't done that, but they've been there in the doldrums of the burgundy and gold. They're challenged to be better, and there's no excuse. There's no excuse. They're being taught by guys who are hands-on. I watched Kingsbury. My gosh, it was just watching him work with not just Jaden Daniels, but the three quarterbacks that were working out. It's just a different vibe. Again, does it equate to wins? I don't know, but I just have the feeling that at least this time we will watch this team and there'll be a purpose about them, and that's refreshing. I sat down with Ron Rivera every Monday, and there were times when I tried to make that as entertaining as I could. But when we were done and he walked back to the building, I would turn to my cameraman and go, "What just happened? Like, what was that?" I didn't know, because he wasn't lying to me. But it's like, did he see the same thing I saw the day before? I don't think so.
Yeah, I was actually all right. I wasn't going to go here because I don't want people to think that I'm bashing on Ron, and not that you are either. But it's just there was a reality of covering the last 4 years. I think the first time you got to sit down with Quinn, what did you turn around and tell your cameraman after that?
I thought this dude was a little more down to earth and was so excited for the gig and just had a different passion about him. That's what I felt. I felt the passion right out of the gate and just very personable. Not that Ron wasn't personable, because we actually did get along really well, and I tried to forge that relationship. But with Quinn, it was just, my gosh, you felt it, and you there wasn't BS. It was just he was just raring to go, and he was so thrilled to be working with a legitimate general manager. And I know that we talked about it, but this organization finally has a legitimate general manager, not the Vinny Serratos of the world, not Bruce Allen, who I don't know what the hell he did in the job. But this guy, Adam Peters, has a clue and has a way about him. And I'll tell you this, nobody saw it in practice on Tuesday, but there was a play that was extended by Jaden. There was no rush, and he threw one down the right sideline. That ball was headed straight for the owner, Josh Harris. And Adam Peters stepped in front, put a hand on Harris, and knocked the ball away. But they were so far away that nobody's really paying attention. I reached out to Peters later and said, that's a heck of a business decision you made there. And his response was, great observation. Just a different guy. I don't think Vinny Serrato would have seen the ball, and Bruce wouldn't have the wherewithal to know what was going on.
No. I'm just gonna reserve all
but the culture
comments.
is good here.
Yeah, it's nice. People don't know what to do with it yet, but just they'll learn. It'll be cool.
Yeah.
It's gonna be. What's gonna happen is eventually it will lead to wins. I don't know how quickly, but doing the right things over time matters, and this is a group that will ultimately do that. Chick, always appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for your time, and I'm guessing I'll see you in Ashburn next week.
Yes, you will. Stay out of jail.
I will do my best. You too, for whatever that's
All
worth.
right, man.
Chick Hernandez with us here on the Hoffman Show, talking some golf, talking some football. Always great to catch up with Mr. Chick here on the Team 980. We get back. Clint Yates joins us, his Friday visit on the show. And, you know, he was listening earlier this week when he heard what Ted Leonsis had to say to the sports junkies about potentially buying the Nationals. And Clinton has some thoughts. He'll share them with us next on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. On Fridays, we're joined by Clayton Yates, host of ESPN Daily, a podcast you can get daily. Of course, commentator as well. You catch him on Around the Horn, amongst other places. Yates, what up?
Nothing much, man. I am not in any exotic locale. I am not in my lovely Venice Beach apartment. I am in the office in a side room because they were fire alarm testing today. So safety first, but on the grind, commuted today.
Wow.
At my job on the job.
Wow. Whoa. I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, man.
Yeah, man. Nothing wrong with it. Just hasn't happened this way in a while.
Just out here grinding. All right, so your ears perked up this week out there on the left coast when you heard Ted Leonsis here on the Team 980 with the Sports Junkies made a cool announcement that they're moving the game against Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky for the Mystics to Capital One Arena. But it was the part of the interview where he talked about the Washington Nationals, who are not currently for sale, which he acknowledged in the interview. But he said if they ultimately did come for sale again, he would be very interested in buying. What struck you about his reasoning and that fact that you started firing off text messages to me?
Well, I just kind of don't get what he's going for here. I truly don't understand who he thinks his constituency is as far as fans are concerned, nor do I understand who he's trying to convince that this is a good idea at the same time. Think of it this way. If you're openly admitting that you need another pro sports franchise to properly flesh out your portfolio, that strikes me as awfully desperate and just kind of a bizarre way to go about indicating that this is something that you want to do. And number two, it also kind of implies that, like, are we supposed to care about what Leonsis' business practices are? Does he honestly believe that fans of teams that he happens to govern or own, if you will, are therefore directly tied to what should be his financial besting? Who cares if it would flesh out your portfolio if you had the Nationals? How about you convince people you'd be a good baseball owner first? Because you haven't convinced anybody you'd be a good owner of really any team based on, the Potomac Yard situations, never mind a myriad of other issues. It was just such an oddly myopic view to me to address this situation when the team's not even for sale, implying that everybody should want him to own another sports team kind of just because he wants to. I don't get that at all.
Yeah, well, in fairness, he was asked. I think it was Jason or maybe, I don't remember who it was. But someone asked him the question about the Nats. It wasn't like he brought it up unprompted. But to your point, this is kind of, I don't know, like we're in this weird stage of sports media and sports ownership where those things are crossing, which seems problematic. The state owning the media, like long history, don't need to educate folks. People get it. But if you're going to embark in those businesses as a businessman in Leonsis, like I kind of think you have to run them independently. Like you need to do what's best for the network, and you need to do what's best for the teams. And you need to put people in place that have autonomy to run those operations, not necessarily in conjunction. Now, I also do get, like, is it better for him programming wise? Is what's best for the network to have the Washington Nationals? Yes. But if they can free themselves from Masson, and maybe that's another like interesting sidebar. We want to get into the details of like, is Leonsis buying the Nationals a good thing for the sole reason that it gets them away from the Orioles situation potentially, and that would be a part of the agreement. Well, that's a discussion we could have, but you can, believe it or not, run a media network and sign a rights agreement like was done for the previous 80 years of sports media and game broadcasts without actually owning the team too.
It feels like he kind of wants to have it both ways. And I don't really, here's the deal, is that after the Potomac Yard situation, which was a very big deal in terms of public trust with the fan base, at least as far as I'm concerned, to turn around and even remotely hint at the idea of, oh yeah, well, I'm eyeballing this too, even if asked, to me indicates just such a lack of understanding of what is happening around you that is a little bit concerning to me. I don't think I would want Ted Leonsis owning a Major League Baseball team. I really honestly don't. Now, we can differ on this, Craig, because you've indicated to me that you kind of think he might actually be better at owning a baseball team than other things. I don't know that I do. The way that I've seen this ownership group operate and the way that I've seen other baseball owners operate does not indicate as much to me. But at the same time, I wonder, man, what is the goal here? Who are you trying to compete with? And why do you think you just have kind of a right to this when none of the teams are good?
Well, we can circle back to the baseball thing in a second, but that is something that I also wonder. And like, I think I come at this from a much more curious place than you, where you're like, I've already made up my mind. I'm good on this. But I like consolidation of power in general worries me. So you and I are in lockstep there. But when he talks about his competition being like DC versus New York versus LA versus some of these other big cities and their media situations, like, I don't really understand that. Like, I would love to unpack that with Ted to be like, what do you mean that's your competition? In what way? How are you competing? What's the scoreboard? What's in it for you, for them, for us as consumers, that there is competition between DC and New York for how their baseball, basketball, etc. games are broadcast?
Nobody cares about that. I think Ted cares about it in a keeping up with the Joneses way. That's the only explicable reason, because remember, when Daniel M. Snyder was still here in town, there was always this weird kind of back and forth as to who had some sort of, I don't know, cultural relevancy in the town in the moment that seemed to really affect Ted. And it seemed like a lot of the moves that he made were based on things that he saw in other places and kind of trying to keep up and therefore feel that he was on the forefront of how people did things. But every market's not the same, Craig. And not every owner has to do everything the same way. And it kind of feels as if, just for the sake of saying, oh, hey, I've got one of these too, a regional sports network where I own everything, including the broadcast rights, is why he wants to do it. When in reality, that's not the kind of market that the district is. I don't think that anybody is pining for that. I don't even necessarily think, I don't want to say it wouldn't work that well, but part of the reason why you and I and other people we know are in this media business is because, well, there was some separation at some point. And the farther we get away from that, I feel that it just doesn't make the user experience any better. I don't think anybody enjoys sports more because of how they see them, whether it be state-sponsored media or otherwise. You got to start with the teams. The media is a separate matter, but that separation is critical. It just feels like he's biting off something more than he really even knows how to chew, and for reasons that are really difficult to understand.
Yeah, I also think Clinton Yates, if you don't recognize the voice, and I guess, Clinton Yates, our guest here on the Hoffman Show. I also, like, I think the teams that have done that stuff well have also let their operations, like their media operations, just be media operations.
Just cook.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that, Michael Kay is the voice of the Yankees on Yes, which is owned by the Yankees. The Yes Network is owned by the Steinbrenner family. They also simulcast his daily radio show on ESPN New York. Mm-hmm. I don't think Michael Kay has a reputation of being soft on the Yankees.
No.
And they've kind of let that be. I think one of the best, even in-house media operations that I'm aware of, that because I used to work down there, the Dallas Cowboys media department is really good. Mm-hmm. They will absolutely say what they feel about the team. And I think that Monumental has a different reputation there. And I think that they're like, you can have it from an ownership situation both ways and make the money on the back end. Jerry Jones has certainly done that. The Yankees have certainly done that. I picked those not just because I'm familiar with them, but they also were the two most valuable franchises, I think, in American sports.
Right.
And so if your goal here is to make the money, and you want to be a crude businessman about it, I actually think that ensuring that you have like non-state media type, ensuring that you have neutral, objective, that's the word I'm looking for, coverage, is a part of the equation. And I think what's happened is the more teams that have done this, and this isn't necessarily about Monumental, but it doesn't necessarily exclude them, like a lot of them have done the like Homer announcer thing and taken that to their pre and post game shows and taken it to a level that I think it actually does impact the fan experience, but not in a good way.
The personality types here are huge. It's not just about the Cowboys and the Yankees being the biggest value franchises there are. It's about the fact that the guys who run them can deal with criticism. There was a time when Ted used to write blog posts about your station because people were too critical and he couldn't handle it. Like, what? You know what I mean? And now you're trying to run this whole thing from the top to bottom with 3-4 sports in the same city. You're right. There is a way that you can affect the fan experience positively, and there are some teams that do it. But based on what we have seen of the man prior to, this does not seem like a good fit and a good way to do things. It seems like basically what you're trying to do is get a bunch of teams and a bunch of media networks to tell you how smart you are and how cool you are that you have all these teams. And that's just not that dope, Craig. You know what I mean? If the product...
that's where I'm not willing to go that far.
Okay.
And you've been around longer than I have, and like you've interacted with Ted more than I have, because I've interacted actually with him one-on-one, basically none. I think literally none. But like Ted, the people around Ted that I know, he strikes me as someone who actually wants good outcomes, and occasionally I think veers off in a path that makes no sense to actually achieve those outcomes. And that's where I've been really critical of him in the past. Mm-hmm. I don't actually think he comes at it from a not malignant, that's not the word I'm looking for, but a negative, whatever type of way. Yeah, malintended. You know, I don't think his intentions are bad, but there is an impact, intentions impact conversation here. And I do think the impact at times, even like the Potomac Yards thing in his head, he's like, I'm going to create the greatest fan experience in the world. And it's like, yeah, but you missed a couple of steps along the way. And that's a huge, huge, huge problem. And I think that to me is where, it almost doesn't matter what the intentions are, is like, hey man, you got to look at the reality of the situation. And I don't know that you owning every team in town outside of the football team and the media network and this and that is actually the best way to achieve the thing that you claim to want in maximal fan experience, et cetera.
You're exactly right. And that's where I think that it doesn't matter whether or not it's malintended or not. I don't think it's malintended either. I think it's misguided, just the same way that a lot of other things have been misguided. And that's kind of where I worry the most too, where I'm like, why are you thinking about this? Like what is actually going on in terms of where Monumental is trying to go, that you're openly discussing buying other teams that are on other networks as a part of your programming operation? I don't want to get too far into this, but like, I would think that there are other priorities for Monumental right now in terms of what they have to broadcast based on what's already there, rather than trying to get yourself into another dispute with another team. It's just, look, the bottom line is the reason why I get kind of upset about this is because it feels like for so many different fan experiences in DC, there never seems to be a full, fair shake of the ideas that are put forward, the execution to make them happen, and then just finally seeing whether or not they work. There's always some sort of thing that's jumping in the middle. And if in the middle of a Wizards rebuild, if we're going to call it that or whatever, there's some notion that the owner of the team is actually trying to buy a baseball team as well. It just all feels so scattershot sometimes in a way that really is kind of depressing when you think about what is the goal here. If it's just Ted making money, okay, why are you going about it this way? If it's ever winning, please let me know. Please.
Well, I will say, not necessarily in Ted's defense, but just in the journalistic intention of putting all the things out there. Ted did kind of address that in the interview with the Junks, and he was basically like, I'm not out there scouting players. Like, my job's up here. I don't need to be in the middle of the rebuild because I've hired the guys to do the rebuild. And good, you stay out of that rebuild, because there's no owner in sports. Matt Ishbia thinks he's supposed to be in part of the rebuild in Phoenix. And look where that's gotten them. It's actually gotten them closer to needing a rebuild when they had an NBA Finals team 4 years ago.
Do we actually trust staying out of the rebuild? And if staying out of the rebuild means you've got to buy another team to occupy your time, anyway.
Well, that's a different story.
That's a little unfair. That's a little unfair by me. I get that, but I
will say, if you run a media network, there ain't nothing better for your media network programming wise than a baseball team.
That's true.
Because dang, you got 162 nights a year filled.
Yeah. Easy
money. You don't got to think about that programming.
I totally agree. It's not a bad idea. It's just that you don't have to own the team to do it. And after the debacle of Potomac Yards, we're not buying this. This doesn't even, the timing is so off that it just feels, I don't know, it feels disconnected from reality.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is if actions have consequences. And even though Ted wound up in the place that I think most people wanted him, which is staying in DC and extending the lease and all those things, when you threaten to use your power to move the teams, and then 3 months later are like, hello, yes, hi, it's me again. I would like more power. That's not going to be met well, nor should it, because people are paying attention.
Thank you. We're all smarter than this. It's the capital of the United States of America. I have to go, Craig.
Okay. Thank you for your time. As always, Clinton Yates, everybody, ESPN Daily. And we'll talk to you next week.
Happy weekend, kiddos.
All right, that's Clint Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show. Happy weekend to you as well. When we get back, we'll react to some of what Clinton said. Maybe even take a call or two. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're always live, of course, on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Back to Commanders OTAs at the top of the hour. A little take command for you on a Friday. Logan Paulson and I talking about Jaden Daniels Day on Tuesday. We went deep, think it's worth your time, so we'll play it for you in case you haven't had a chance to check the podcast here on the Hoffman Show. Real quick, I don't know that we're going to have time to do this any other time. I don't know. I'm going to pull up the old rundown. By the way, shout out to our guy Metal Chris here in the studio today in for Ant. But we will so appreciate you, Chris, and everything you're doing today. But I don't know that we'll have the time to do this later on in the show. So just real quick, because I did watch this last night. I think for all the talk about Caitlin Clark and how good she is, and even all the talk about how, hey, this is going to take time and there's adjustments and all the narrative around, Diana Taurasi's comments and people being like, oh, like this is going to be maybe harder than some people who haven't watched a lot of WNBA. And I'm not trying to gatekeep here. Like if you're new to the league and you're enjoying it, great. I would also tell you, if you're watching the Indiana Fever play and you're like, this is terrible, you're not wrong. The Indiana Fever, they're a bad basketball team, man. And I don't know that that's going to stay because they have a lot of young talent, and Aaliyah Boston's great, and Caitlin Clark is still, like, you can see the glimpses of impact she's going to have. And they also played the two best teams in the Eastern Conference, who are matchup nightmares for them the first two games. They actually have the size and strength to make Boston's life miserable inside and life difficult for Clark on the perimeter with a bunch of bodies they can throw at her. Not every team is going to be as good as their opponents, but the fact that we are 2 games into this for Caitlin Clark and people are already like, is their coach any good? Is not great for the infrastructure around her there in Indiana. Because what is going to happen is there are a lot of eyes, and that is a pressure up situation. And through 2 games, they look like one of the worst professional basketball teams from a coaching standpoint that I've ever seen in my life. And I wonder how long that stands. Now, the coach, Christy Sides, was hired just over a year ago. This is her 2nd year on the job. She's a very highly thought of assistant around the league. But if you're going to have this many eyeballs, part of, obviously they want to win, and some of that's going to take time and development, but you can't lose the business because you're so bad that you're non-competitive. And that's what it's been through 2 games for Indiana. And they look like they don't have any solutions to any of the problems that were presented to them. And while some of them are personnel related, because Connecticut and New York are really good and Indiana's not, these are predictable problems. And to not have solutions for Clark being pressured and for Boston, facing a lot of or having tough matchups inside and having ways to get her better looks, and just to not be able to pass and catch the basketball at a high level, because you're so flustered and so unconfident in what you're doing, that is a brutal start. And so I do wonder, not to be like, hey, let's bring the worst parts of sports discourse now to women's sports and try to fire coaches at every turn. I do wonder, I was texting back and forth with a friend of mine who covers and follows the league today, and we were both just like, how long can this go on? So it's going to be really interesting. This weekend, they play again against the Liberty. So you get a chance to play the same team back-to-back games. This one's at New York tomorrow at 1 p.m. So it is a rough start of the season schedule-wise for Indiana. And then they somehow wind up with Connecticut again. The first non-New York or Connecticut game they play is Seattle on Wednesday, May 22nd. So that's next Wednesday. And by the way, potentially in that game, Clark's going to see Nika Mule, who was all over her in the NCAA tournament against Connecticut. Mule, by the way, one of the better-known rookies as well, has to still get her work visa because she was on a student visa at UConn. She's, I believe, Croatian. And they got to figure out her visa situation. So that's been a mess. That's less than ideal, to say the least. And then you got Indiana against Cameron Brink, the number 2 pick, and the LA Sparks next Friday. And that's like the first team that's kind of more in their realm. So it's going to be really interesting to watch these first couple games because also Clark looks incredibly frustrated. The body language is real bad. And she's super competitive. She's young. These are the kinds of things that happen. But it is going to be with all the eyes. It's one thing when you're winning like you were at Iowa. And this is not me blaming Clark or saying anything negative about Clark, but like she got used to winning at Iowa. And this happens a lot with a lot of college athletes going into the pros. They lose more in their first couple of weeks of their or months of their career than they did their entire college careers. And that's probably going to happen here. And how the organization reacts, how the league reacts, and how Clark reacts are going to be storylines that we certainly follow throughout the season. And there are millions and millions of eyes on those storylines as it continues to go throughout the summer. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, take command on a Friday. Logan Paulson and I break down Jaden Daniels' first couple of practices as a commander, including his day Tuesday at OTAs. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming, of course, on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. If you'd like to watch the show, that's also one of the places you can get the full episodes of the Take Command podcast. Myself, Logan Paulson, twice a week, talking all things Commanders. If you haven't checked out our latest episode, some talk about the schedule and talk about OTAs earlier on in the week. Next week on the show, or in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to say this conservatively here because we haven't quite nailed down the timing yet. But you saw the guys with the logs doing all the team building, bonding stuff. The guys behind that training are going to join the show. So pretty pumped about that. Over the next couple weeks, you'll learn a lot more about why Dan Quinn wanted to do that in his first offseason with the Commanders. But as for practice on the field, some observations from earlier in the week. Here are Logan and I breaking everything down, starting with QB currently 2, probably soon to be 1, in Jaden Daniels. Okay, let's get into the players themselves. Let's start with Daniels because he's obviously the headliner as the hopeful future of the franchise that comes with being the number 2 pick. One thing that I thought was interesting, Logan, I've been waiting to ask you this since Tuesday. You talked so much on the last pod about how great his feet are and his base is underneath him and all that kind of stuff. And it jumped out to me watching on tape. One thing that I thought was interesting, seeing it in person, I thought he was more narrow in person than I was expecting. Like his feet. Now, obviously, he's a slighter build guy, but he was a little bit like taller and more upright, not quite as wide of a base as I was expecting. But he's so quick and he's on balance. And like, I'm not saying that as like it's a problem. It's just different than I thought. And I talked about that on the radio show, and someone left I thought was a smart YouTube comment. Like, he's 6'4". He doesn't have to be big and long to carry. And he also is like super explosive. So he doesn't have to necessarily have these big, wide strides to cover the space in a drop, for instance, that a shorter quarterback would. But I'm just curious, like, as you continue to watch him grow in some of the mechanics, like, is it different than you expected in person, better, whatever? Like, what do you make of kind of watching him go through the fundamentals of playing the position?
Yeah, I think it's better to me. I knew it was good. We talked about this before. Like, when you watch a lot of film, like, it's good, but you don't know like how good it is. And during the film evaluation, like, I was like really, I was on the fence about those top 3 guys, and I really liked all of them. And then I was like, what is the differentiating factor here between these guys? And then you get into the film, you're watching arm angle, you're watching playmaking ability, you watch all the big stuff, and then you start watching their feet, and you're like, man, this dude's feet are excellent. And I think, like, kind of to your point, it's not like this big, long, deliberate drop back. And I think, as you know, like being a strength conditioning coach, like one of the elements of change of direction and like general athleticism is having a foot cadence, like in terms of number of steps you're taking, that allows you to make adjustments, right? So like long striders tend to have a harder time changing direction. Short striders tend to be better at change of direction, right? That's why shorter receivers tend to be kind of quick and more sudden, in addition to like muscle belly lengths and all that kind of nerdy stuff. But with him, the foot cadence is always something that I love because he's so tight with it. He can accelerate, he can decelerate, he can kind of bounce around in a good base the whole time he's in the pocket. And so again, that kind of goes to your point of like this narrower kind of more under you kind of throwing posture. And I think it's extremely advantageous. And if there was one thing that I think put him head and shoulders above even a guy like Caleb Williams, is that, because it allows you, and I think you see it in 7-on-7, it allows him to get to stuff so quickly. It's not this long, I need to kind of reset my feet. It's like, I'm at the reset right now. And I think that, again, it was something that you were hoping, or I was hoping, would translate, because we talked about this before. We threw a bunch of Bach fades, you threw a bunch of hitches, and that's relatively simplistic footwork, but you're hoping that the dynamic kind of twitchy nature of his feet allow him to get to other stuff. And I think you've seen that over the first 3 or 4 practices, is just this ability to be like, I'm throwing this hitch, it's covered, I'm at the check down. And it's like an instantaneous check down. And that's the footwork. And I think like that's something that and I don't want to harp on it too much, because obviously there's a lot of growing still to do and a lot of development that still needs to happen. But I do think that makes him much more compelling as a pocket passer than even I would have thought after seeing it in person during the draft process. Like, I think that him as a passer is going to be significantly better. And I think, like Robert Griffin came out and said, like, he's way better than me as a passer. And I think when you look at his feet, that's like maybe the number one indicator for me of the difference between the two players.
For sure. And the other thing I think it helps prevent from him from a footwork standpoint is he's not going to overstride.
Correct.
Because you're not starting so long. And we've seen that, like, we saw that with JJ McCarthy at Michigan, like throwing, I think it was left. Like he had accuracy issues, or like Drake May, he's got kind of even though he's so big, like he had this like big, wide quarterbacky looking thing. And then his footwork was all over the place when he'd actually go to throw. And with Jaden, he's just on balance all the time. And it's really cool to watch in person. It looks different than, a lot of other quarterbacks that I think you played with, that I covered, et cetera, et cetera. But like, that's not to say that it's wrong or bad or anything. It's actually great. It's better, I would say. I would argue, especially with his athleticism, to watch that in person. And the ball just, it's like, it's different than watching someone who's got just an insane arm power arm. But that ball does fly out of his hand. Like his release, watching it in person, like the ball is in his hand and then it's out. It just zips, it pops. It's got that snap to it that the elite guys have in terms of release, and it's really fun to watch. I don't know how much I took out of the 7-on-7 itself. I spent more time, I think, watching the other field, and it's kind of hard to see everything from where we were on the sidelines. But is there anything you were able to garner for where you guys were doing the live stream in the end zone, especially with Jaden on the far side of the field?
Yeah, I think again, it's the I think the composure that he's shown, like kind of the understanding of the offense, which I really appreciate. Like he does such a good job of, again, the deep ball stuff is all there for him. He threw one to Bryson Tremaine. Bryson makes a great catch, but like that deep ball kind of drop, allowing the receiver to adjust. He threw two to Dax Milne. Dax made a great catch on one, got his feet in on the sideline. That's awesome. Love to see that. But his ability to work the middle of the field, not even like the true middle, but like even just like the hashes out, is better. That is progressing. And again, like he had to do some off schedule stuff where he's breaking the pocket and running around a little bit in 7-on-7, but it's not scrambling to run, it's scrambling to throw and getting the receivers to work scramble drill and all that kind of stuff. So again, I think there's just a maturity as a passer that shows up. I think he threw a pick in 7-on-7, if I remember correctly.
I think there was one, yeah.
Yeah, but I think on the whole, like you come away being pretty impressed with just his general process, the footwork, how he gets the stuff, how he gets the checkdowns, how he seems to know and understand. I mentioned this at the rookie minicamp. Hey, they're in, kind of this Tampa 2. Like I need to get the ball down to the back, and it's not like this big labored look down. It's like, oh, okay, good. I'm at the top, ball's out, and it allows the back to make plays. And in 2 minutes at the very end of practice, I thought he did a really nice job of throwing a ball over the middle of the field, like laying it, over the outside ear of the linebacker, inside the safety, right to Cole Turner. Cole dropped it, the ball's wet, whatever, like tough catch. But I like seeing that variation of his throw. And you mentioned that he doesn't, he's got a quick release and the ball kind of jumps out of his hand. He doesn't throw like an overpowering ball. He throws a very catchable ball, which I think is also something that's going to make him kind of endear him to the receivers. And again, like it's early in the process, but I think he's kind of, you always say this, he's passing the test that's given him. He's checking all these boxes. He's obviously studying. His footwork's on point. He's trying to be a passer. He is a passer, but like you're seeing that effort for him to cultivate that skill set at the NFL level. And I think you see a pretty good efficiency from him. And again, we're not charting throws yet or anything like that, but I think that's something that I come away from these practices and being like, okay, like this is a good starting point, and hopefully it continues to grow, and we'll see where he's at week 1.
Meanwhile, on the other field, I feel like the defense was the story. Plays made all over the place. Got Marcus Mariota probably through 3 or 4 picks. Some of those are probably on Mariota. Some of those are just tremendous plays made by Jeremy Chin and others who came away with picks. It's also fun being out there for the first time. It's like, wait, what number is everyone again? A pick by 11? Oh, that's Chin. Welcome, new fella. And so it was cool to kind of see the mixing and the matching and the groups coming together. What stood out, really, I would say more so than like Mariota and the one offense. What stood out from that one defense for you?
I think the fact that Quan Martin's playing safety, I think that was kind of the big thing that came out of it. Him and Jeremy Chin are out there together. I think Jordan McGee getting reps with that group, and how Jordan McGee looks as a player is much different than I thought how he would look seeing him in person. He's just a bigger, like well-muscled person. And I think the fact that he moves so well, He's got that great closing ability. He's got that great instinct. At least it was at Temple. Obviously, he's got to grow up and do some stuff there. But I think that was pretty impressive. The rotation at corner, Benjamin St. Juste playing the right corner. Emmanuel Forbes kind of with that second or third group on the main field. And I actually thought Forbes had a pretty solid practice in terms of breaking some stuff up. But, Davis is kind of the starting corner, that left corner right now, which is always subject to change. The level of the communication by the defense I thought was very high. I mentioned I always want to call him Wink. That's not his name. What's the defense coordinator's name?
Joe Witt Jr.
Joe Witt, yes. Joe Witt. And his kind of standard, the way he operated, I thought also was was really good in that situation. So I think just generally a very sharp day from the defense. So obviously the personnel is interesting, but the energy that they played with kind of, and in the same way that the offense was crisp, I thought the defense was crisp, and I'm going to give Witt a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I think one thing that you can just see immediately, I remember who I was having this conversation with on the sideline, but like if you took an overhead shot of the field and you just had to circle which guys are DQ, AP guys, which guys are holdovers, just by the size of the players, you could tell who is who. The big physical nature of some of these guys that they brought in is very apparent when you were on the sideline in person. And you're like, oh, that's a Rivera era guy. That's a holdover, a little bit different body type than the Jordan McGee's or the undrafted corner who now I'm blanking on his name.
Anusium, man. He is a big son of a gun, man.
Yeah, you're like, that's a corner? Gracious. Like, there's just a ton of those dudes where, like, they value a physicality and a size and a speed and athleticism that clearly matters. I mean, you look at San Francisco and, like, look at the bullies on the block coming off the bus, when San Francisco pulls up to a stadium. Like, that kind of thing really does translate in a league where physicality can bust up a lot of great schematics and a lot of great skill. And you see the emphasis on that, I think, just when they line up, nevertheless, when they actually start to play.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this on the last show, just the kind of the length that they've acquired, which is kind of falling in your point, but kind of just sitting with a different angle, right? It makes it a little bit cloudy, especially with underneath coverage. Dominique Hampton is 6'2.5". He's got 33 and an 1/8 inch arms. Like, he's 215 pounds. Tyler Owens, the kid from Texas Tech, he's 6'2", he's 220, and he's got 34.5 inch arms. Like Anusium, he's got long arms also. Like, they just cover grass and cloud throwing windows in a way that's very unique. Like, Dominique Hampton on Zach Ertz. And I thought Zach Ertz had a really solid day of practice just in terms of understanding leverages and route stems and how to break leverages and the double sticks, and the little subtlety of his route movement was awesome. But Dominique Hampton had him on a crossing route, and it's like, Zach's 6'4", 6'5" almost, 245, 250 pounds. And Dominique Hampton, who is a star dime linebacker, safety type body type, they're the same size. And it's just like, that's such a unique thing to see in terms of the length. And, we knew that was something they were going to target in terms of like how they built that Dallas defense. They have all these kind of tweener type guys, but I guess like the visualization of it, like seeing how it does kind of make things cloudy and the just general size of these players. Again, they're not like fat guys, but they're just tall and long and angular, in a way that's that is very distinct. Screams
football player.
Yeah.
Anybody else that stood out for you that you want to mention before we head on to the schedule?
I mean, Pittman had an interception. I mentioned Bryson Tremaine with some catches. I think we got to talk about Luke McCaffrey real quick. Like, that guy is just, he is just a pro, man. He's a pro's pro. Like, you watch him practice, the way he runs his routes, the intensity with which he's practicing. Like, I think it was Mariota, it might have been Driscoll, threw up a post, and it looked like it was distinctly overthrown.
Yeah,
it
looked like it was going into the woods.
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of playing with some really good receivers that just have this ability to like unhitch the wagon when they need to. Like, they just kind of relax their body, find another gear. And he was able to run under a ball that I thought was clearly underthrown. He also had a play where, I think OZ catches it on like a little hitch or something like that. And he's on, Luke's on the far side and runs all the way across the field at a full speed sprint to cut off the safety for what would have been like the touchdown block. And so I just think, you get that guy in here. I also thought it was interesting that he's playing like predominantly X receiver, like he's backing up Terry McLaurin. Like, which I thought was kind of a little bit of a surprise, maybe, like, you know, because I thought he'd kind of fill that big slot role, but a guy that I think is going to be just a tremendous pro. You know, Ben Sinnott, I thought, had some nice catches. Been interesting to see him move around. Colston Yankoff, the guy from UCLA, is a guy that when I see him run, I'm just like, dang, like you're a better athlete than I anticipated. Armani Rogers, seeing him back on the field, like he looks the part. Like, I know he's got to get healthy, and I know he's got to get back in football and start running routes and stuff, but he runs like a receiver and he looks like an offensive tackle, man. He is a big dude. So those are some names that stick out to me on the main field. Yeah, those are kind of the big ones in terms of catching the football and just kind of making a good impression on day one in conjunction with all the defensive players. I think I've mentioned Pittman had an interception, the linebacker, the new guy. That's always good to see. But yeah, that's kind of high level stuff.
Yeah, the other two things I'll mention real quick. One guy that stood out that was not on that main field was Jamin, but he also, I think, was playing a lot of Mike on the second field. Like, he was definitely that, or he's just doing a good job of communicating, but he very much seemed to be in the middle of the field. So I think that's interesting. Like, what kind of role do they see from him? And like, kind of, is that cross training? Will he be on the main field tomorrow? Like, what, or next week? Like, who knows? But that's something to kind of watch what role Jamin Davis has. And then you mentioned the receiving room. They added Demir Bird as part of a workout yesterday, so they signed him. So clearly they want to keep kind of tinkering at this receiving position. I'm curious what exactly they are looking for that they don't feel like they have right now, that they brought in Martavius Bryant, they brought in Demir Bird, they brought in a bunch of guys to work out. They ultimately wind up signing Bird for right now.
I think that is probably correlated with, you know, I was watching, I think it was Routes on Air, and I think Rosemead Jack Saint slipped, you know, and he kind of tweaked his hamstring a little bit. It looked like he kind of grabbed up and was walking towards the sideline. So I don't know if that's a tinkering thing or more just like we need a body, you know, for camp or for the off season. And I would kind of lean towards the latter there, which is really disappointing. You know, talk about a guy that I was really excited. I had a really high draft grade on him, not really high, but I had a draftable grade on him. Really liked the player. Thought he kind of filled an interesting niche in terms of special teams, like size, value. And then to see him get hurt kind of week one of the offseason program's tough, but hopefully he gets healthy and, you know, can kind of make his mark later in training camp. So
yeah, so we'll see what ultimately happens there. Week 2, we're back there next week, right? We're just in it now.
We're in it.
So week 2 OTAs next week. For now, the schedule.
You're hot.
If you want to know our thoughts on the schedule, you missed it on the radio yesterday. Good news. That's from the Take Command podcast. You can listen to it anytime, anywhere. Just search Take Command in your favorite podcast app, and Logan and I's thoughts come to you. Well, if you hit the subscribe button, they'll come right to you twice a week throughout the off season. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, NBA action tonight will get you set for Knicks and Pacers and the rest of the weekend. It's our weekend preview to round out the final half hour of our show here on the Team 980. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. A couple quick thoughts on the Knicks-Pacers game tonight. Then we'll hit our weekend preview, and then we'll get up on out of here. So key thing to me tonight for Knicks and Pacers is, what is Jalen Brunson's number? Like, if I tell you the number is 34.5, I think if he's above it, the Knicks win. If he's below it, the Knicks are in trouble. And maybe even that number is lower. But so far in this series, game 1, 43, and obviously we know what he did against Philadelphia. He went 4 straight 40-point games in the playoffs, last 3 against Philadelphia. And for whatever it's worth, the game before that in the Philly series, he had 39. So he went 39, 47, 40, 41 to close out the Sixers, 43 to start the series against the Pacers, 29 in a win in game 3. But that was, remember, the game where he only played 32 minutes because he sprained his ankle, or did whatever he did. It was sprained ankle, sprained wrist. I don't remember what it was. Foot something. But yeah, Brunson was out for part of that game, comes back, destroys the Pacers in the second half. And then he only has 26 and 18 in the 2 games in Indianapolis. So can he be more limited on the road again against this Indiana team where maybe they're a little more confident, maybe they're a little more aggressive, maybe they get away with a little bit more contact because it's a home game? Whatever the reason is, they can keep Jalen Brunson under 35 points. They have a shot tonight, which is still, to be clear, a lot of points. Because then it comes down to what do the rest of the Knicks do. And remember, at this point, there just aren't a lot of the rest of the Knicks. They're playing basically 6 guys, with Alec Burks being their 6th guy off the bench. I guess, Chua is playing decent minutes, so maybe 7. He's just not giving you a lot production-wise, just kind of holding down the fort, although he was a plus 15 in the last game. But they've got to get a ton from Josh Hart, a lot from Dante DiVincenzo, and then monster from Jalen Brunson, and they just don't have that much margin for error. The other big thing to watch is Pascal Siakam and his number. He only scores 22 points in the last game. Can you get him up closer to 25 and a better defensive night? I would also watch for Siakam to be guarding Brunson potentially. And then, of course, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. Tyrese Halliburton, 13 points is not good enough for him, and that's what he was in the Game 5 loss in New York. We'll take a look at the rest of our weekend preview. Tons of stuff happening this weekend all across the world of sports, including a couple of other NBA games. We'll give you a lineup of the rest of the weekend around the DMV. All that next to wrap up the Hoffman Show. We're with you till 7 o'clock tonight here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Time for our weekend preview, which is still whether Metal Chris is running the show, whether Anthony's running the show, no matter where I'm doing the show from in the entire world, brought to you by no one. But we're open for business. Give us a call. It's an interesting sports weekend because for the first time in a long time, not a ton of NFL stuff to look forward to. Like, it's funny because the last two weekends we've kind of been looking forward to the schedule release during the week, and then it got delayed last week, and now obviously it happened this week. Now we're just in pure OTA mode. So really all eyes are on the NBA playoffs and then everything else that is going on. NBA playoffs this weekend. We could have a couple of Game 7s. It's going to depend on, obviously, starting tonight. We just talked about Knicks Pacers, how that goes. Tomorrow, Thunder Mavericks. If Oklahoma City can win on the road, the 1 seed, they would then get a home game for Game 7 against Dallas. Dallas favored by 3.5 in that one. Luka Doncic averaging 34 a game basically during the season. He's 34, 9.2, and 9.8 in the series. It's gross. Sunday, you got Timberwolves Nuggets. That is for sure. And then Pacers Knicks would be the other game if we have a Game 7 there. So TBD on that. And then Game 7 of OKC Dallas would be on Monday if ultimately that comes to be. Formula One is back this weekend. We always try to make a note of that, in part because I like it. And so do a lot of you from watching Drive to Survive. They're in Imola this weekend. Very fast track. Should be interesting to watch. Of course, a couple weeks ago, we finally saw Max Verstappen lose a race. So if you're into the racing, that is going on this weekend. Plenty of WNBA action this weekend as well, including tonight. The Mystics are hosting the Connecticut Sun. Of course, the Sun 1-0 on the year after beating up Caitlin Clark in her debut the other night. Mystics coming off a really tough loss to the New York Liberty. They then swapped opponents. Liberty faced the Fever last night. They actually face them again tomorrow, but Mystics on the road in Connecticut tonight. That game, by the way, not on Monumental Sportsnet. That game is on Ion, so find Ion on your local television outfit. It's on your Fubo TVs, your YouTube TVs, et cetera, et cetera. So go ahead and find that, and you can watch the Mystics do battle with Connecticut, and then Seattle, Minnesota tonight as well. Tomorrow in the W, full slate of games. You got Indiana, New York. So the Fever are trying to get their first win with Caitlin Clark on the roster. That one's 1 o'clock on ABC. Number 2 pick in the draft, Cameron Brink. That's actually an ABC doubleheader tomorrow. You got them at Las Vegas, the reigning champs, looking to go 2-0. Chicago and Dallas, so Angel Reese on the road, trying to get her first win tomorrow night, 8 o'clock on NBA TV. And then Atlanta Phoenix is the nightcap on NBA TV tomorrow night. Spirit are back in action this weekend after a week off. They are at home. It's also their pause at the park night. So if you want to watch some great soccer and also be surrounded by dogs, go to Audi Field tomorrow. What more could you possibly want? So that is tomorrow night. They are facing, I'm going to that game and I don't even remember who they got because my brain is mush. Oh, yeah, it's Angel City is in town. So Angel City tomorrow night. And then, of course, the Nats in action all weekend long. They are actually in action right now, a 6:40 start in Philly, so they just got underway against the Philadelphia Phillies. That is a weekend series. And then the last thing I wanted to alert you to real quick, if I can find it, would be DC United. I do believe they are playing this weekend. Yeah, they are at Miami, so they're playing Messi tomorrow. I was like, I know there's a reason why I got that in my head. Yep, they are down at Inter Miami tomorrow. It's a 7:30 kickoff that you can watch on the place that you watch all your MLS games. It's Apple TV. If you watch MLS games. So that's your weekend preview, a little look at everything going on. It's plenty of options all weekend long. It's also supposed to be a craptastic weather day tomorrow, which really sucks. It's getting a little bit better, the forecast, but tomorrow night it should clear up. Sunday will be nice. It's about 72. So tomorrow, sit inside, watch sports. Sunday, get outside, touch grass, and then we'll reconvene here on Monday. We will wrap up the show next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Real things, real people said in real microphones here in just a few minutes. But just kind of going back to the top story of the day, which is this bizarre story with Scottie Scheffler, the world's #1 golfer, who was arrested this morning after miscommunication at best, just a disregard for traffic instructions and police officer trying to do his job at worst, where Scheffler winds up kind of dragging this police officer somewhere between 10 feet and 10 yards, and he winds up getting arrested, charged with a felony of assaulting a police officer, spends part of the morning in jail. Ultimately, the founder or the head of the club Valhalla, where the PGA Championship, one of the year's majors, is being played, which is where Scheffler was trying to get to. He comes and picks Scheffler up from jail after he's released with no bond. I guess they were like, yeah, we know where to find you. Alrighty then. And he goes out and shoots a 66. And, like, there's a million layers to this story, from big macro discussions about policing and micro discussions about whether or not the officer did the right thing here, to the when is the right time to play the "Do you know who I am" card, which apparently Scheffler didn't play, which seems like a tremendous mistake. Because at the very least at this point, because you don't ever want to be "Do you know who I am" guy, unless you are trying to get somewhere where you are is relevant. Like, if I was at a radio station event and I didn't have a badge with me, and some security person was like, hey, buddy, you can't go here, I wouldn't be like, do you know who I am? I'd be like, hey, sorry, I forgot my badge. I host the afternoon show. I promise you I'm supposed to be here. And if he was like, nah, man, you need a credential, then I'd have to call somebody. But Scottie Scheffler, like, had a credential, so he apparently flashed it. The cars, we had a great chat, I thought, with Chick Hernandez, who's veteran of many golf tournaments as a media person, and he's like, these cars these guys come in with are pretty clear, but when you have a police officer who's there to do traffic control around an accident and isn't used to, or isn't part of that usual detail, he doesn't know any different. He just knows a guy's trying to cut the line, trying to get past everybody, and his job is to make sure that doesn't happen. But it just all feels, I think where I landed with this, I don't think I've actually changed in talking about it with Chick and kind of thinking about it more from the start of the show, which is, I just think this is all, like, should be dismissed as a giant misunderstanding. And I know that probably sits wrong with a lot of people who are like, he broke the rules, he should have to pay just because he's a golfer and a rich guy and all this, like, he shouldn't get off. But, like, I just think some things aren't a big deal. And, like, I think there are a lot of times where people get in a lot of trouble for things that aren't a big deal that should just be dismissed because those people aren't menaces to society or dangerous in any way. And we can just, like, be adults about the fact that there was clearly a really big misunderstanding. Scheffler seems like a fine dude. Chick said he's one of the most unassuming guys on the PGA Tour, just like one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And I actually think that, like, your character and kind of your, how you carry yourself matters. If the problem is ultimately that, there's miscommunication between the tournament, the golfers, the local police, and everybody, where Scheffler thinks he's doing the right thing, is doing the wrong thing, and there's this really unfortunate incident, like, why can't we just be adults and be like, this is really unfortunate. Hey, Scotty, by the way, next time there's a big traffic and a bunch of lights and all that kind of stuff, maybe show a little bit more patience. But, like, it just feels like Chick said, the fact that the Louisville police included the price of the police officer's pants in the police report, as if to say, like, hey, you're going to have to pay for this. I don't have a problem with Scottie Scheffler paying for the police officer's pants. Scottie Scheffler and $80 can part like I can part with, I don't know, literally any, I don't know, a penny. No one actually, the only reason I hesitated because no one actually carries change anymore. And, but I can part with the penny. Scottie Scheffler can part with $80. And the penny probably means more to me than the $80 does to Scottie Scheffler because of how much money that dude's made playing golf and how much money he's made from sponsorships. But it just feels like if they just follow through with these charges, they're trying to wring the guy out for money, and that feels wrong too. That's where I landed on it. And from an athletic performance perspective, the fact that he was able to go out and shoot a 66 is insane. That's a superhuman level of compartmentalization. Anyway, on a lighter note, let's wrap up the show with real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Oh, there's some good stuff that we didn't get a chance to get to this week, so we are going to get to it now. J.J. Watt has bought into an English soccer club, so he's been spending more time overseas, and he appeared on a podcast over there and was greeted with questions about the differences between perhaps an NFL player's way of life and diet and such, and the life of a footballer, even an elite athlete over in Europe.
What does it take to get this big? Like, what do you weigh?
Jill looking him up and down. Look at this.
No, but like...
That's one of the nicest parts about being retired, is that I don't have to eat at the same level that I had to eat at before, which sounds like a great problem to have, you know, but like, it's an interesting thing being in England. Finding enough protein over here is difficult. Like the meals just don't have the same amount of protein. There's so much bread. There's so much bread. Like beans on toast, like eggs on toast, like everything's on toast, which is delicious, but I'm like, I need some steak. Like I need some fish. Like, so
how many calories when you play?
So when I was playing, my average was probably about 7,500 calories a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
7,500 calories a day.
Wow.
That's
right now
I'm
on about 4,500 calories a day right now.
And doing what training with that?
I train weights 4 days a week, and I do cardio 3 days a week right now.
5 seconds.
It's like
If you couldn't hear at the end there, the host holds up a basket of bread and goes, "I think we should feed him." Good stuff. That's good podcasting right there. Sean McVay created some good television. Actually, I'll save that one for last. Aryna Sabalenka, one of the 3 best women's tennis players in the world, if not one of the 2 best, really, with Iga Swiatek. She's a bit of a fiery personality in a way that's thoroughly enjoyable, and sometimes Aryna just can't help herself, such as in this interview on the Tennis Channel.
As soon as people start saying, like, okay, stop it, we're tired of this bullshit.
You know...
She just slams the mic down, hangs her head in her hands, knows,
okay, so
can't say that on television.
Before the interview started, she promised she was no F-bombs, no cursing, no nothing, and then you see...
It's just something in my blood, I guess, cursing. It's just like something in my blood.
Aryna,
I can...
We love you here. This just means you're so comfortable at the desk, so we are all about it.
Cut it, please. I guess that's me.
She is her at all times. That's the best. Although, as someone who has had athletes cuss on various platforms that they're not allowed to cuss on, you're just like, oh, I hope I don't get in trouble. Like, you know, your station could. And also, honestly, like, they're on cable. They're fine. There ain't nothing going to happen with that. Besides the clip going viral and being hilarious. Honestly, that's a win for the Tennis Channel. Actually, I don't even think it was the Tennis Channel, which is bad because now we're giving them credit for the interview and going viral, and I'm not crediting the right place. So I apologize to the tennis outlet that belongs to. But as someone who works on a FCC-regulated radio station, not as fun when you're nervous about something that goes out over the air. You're just like, did we dump that? Okay, great. Last but not least, Sean McVay. He had he joined the ESPN schedule release show and made an impact. He had him in tears the other night.
It's Dan. Where are you? We can't get you a... Where
He's not at the draft house. I know
Dan,
that.
I'm in the same temporary office that I've been for 8 years here. So when I was hired in 2017, they said this would be a temporary facility. We're going on year 9 in this thing, so we'll see if we make it over to the Woodland Hills. I'm trapped like a prisoner in this thing, man.
It looks like the room you actually fired me in.
Hey, listen. I'm just fighting, scratching, and clawing for a window in this thing. I still think this office is pretty depressing, Adam.
I agree. You know, to me, if you win a Super Bowl, the office should be upgraded as a general rule.
At least paint the walls, color pop.
I mean, you gotta get, what's Kevin Demoff doing, man? He's too busy, dealing with the teams in Denver. I mean,
5 seconds.
I got urgent enjoyment behind me. I can't even get a window in here.
Incredible. I remember visiting that facility in 2017 as a beat reporter. I went out early, week 2, Washington, LA, and I went to the Rams facility, and I remember them being like, yeah, this is temporary. We'll get out of here in the next couple of years. And sure enough, it is 2024, and Sean McVay is still stuck in the same office. Hope everybody has a tremendous weekend. It's the Hoffman Show. We'll see you Monday here on the Team 980.